What's up, Witcher fans? It's StrangeLuv here, and it's that time again to do another Witcher 3 gameplay analysis video. And as you've probably guessed, this video is going to be about the 15 minutes of gameplay that was released last January, since I haven't had a chance to talk to you guys about it just yet. Also, since PAX East just happened, we got another 7 minutes of gameplay that I've decided to tack on to the end of this video, and I'll just give you guys my thoughts on that as well. And since this video is going to be a little on the long side, I've added some annotations on the screen so you can skip to different parts of my commentary. Now, I'm pretty much going to be giving you just my thoughts on the gameplay, and I will be talking over some of the dialogue scenes, so if you wanted to watch these gameplay videos without any commentary, I'll put a link down below in the description of where you can do so. Alright you guys, let's get right into it. So as you can see, this gameplay opens up with Geralt once again showing off his skills with the signs by fighting off some not-so-happy wraiths in what seems to be some sort of abandoned building. Now, I'm not sure how many of you noticed this the first time around, but these wraiths look like they can actually teleport to get from place to place quickly. We see it right at the very beginning. And I didn't notice that the first time, but thanks to a YouTube user named Ratago for leaving me a YouTube comment about it, we see that that is the case, so Geralt is going to have to utilize his arsenal full of signs and weapons to combat these wraiths. But I think he's pretty well equipped to fight pretty much anything, so my money is still on Geralt. And as Geralt steps out into the daylight, we see that he is on top of a beautiful snow-covered mountainside. Now, The Witcher 3 is already becoming known for having really remarkable graphics card-breaking environments, and we can definitely see why. And something that I really love about this scene in particular is that they sort of made the snow on the ground a lot more patchy. It's kind of like a transitional phase from winter to spring where you have the snow patches on the ground, but also you still see a lot of lush green foliage peeking through wherever the sun is shining. And it's that kind of attention to detail that really makes the environment look realistic, and it also helps a lot for immersion, so I thought they did a really good job with that. So right here we get to see some next-gen horse riding physics as Geralt rides his trusty steed, Roach. And actually, fun fact for those of you who didn't read the books, Geralt always calls all of his horses Roach, so this one is no different. But anyway, Geralt's horse will come wherever you whistle for him. He'll come to your location, as long as there's no bad guys around, I assume. And it looks like up on the map there's some bad guys nearby Geralt, but you know what? Ain't nobody got time for that. Geralt's just gonna keep right on riding. And also on the screen we can see that there is a stamina bar for the horse, so you know when he's getting tired. And also, according to people who got to play during the play sessions, there's also going to be a scare meter for your horse. So if you're on horseback around enemies, there's a likelihood that your horse is going to get spooked, and the more afraid he gets, the more likely he is to rear and knock you off of his back. And so even though it's not on the HUD here, that's another interesting mechanic that we'll have to pay attention to. And since we're talking about the HUD, I want to mention a couple changes that they made to the heads-up display since the last gameplay that we saw. Now if you look up toward the map in the right-hand corner, there's still an icon that shows you the time of day as well as the weather conditions, but if you look right below that, there's actually two new icons, and they look like distance indicators of some kind that show you, I guess, the digital feet to either a quest marker or some sort of waypoint on your map. And in the previous gameplay footage, there was actually an icon with a monster there, which I had speculated was a way to keep track of the monsters you were hunting, but it looks like they've replaced that with these distance indicators, which I think is actually a good idea. I feel like it's a lot more useful to have these distance markers, so it's a welcome change. Alright, so Geralt has arrived at some sort of small mountainside village, and he's heading straight towards the billboard, which is where you're going to find different jobs and quests that you can do in and around that area. Now what I love about this scene is if you look closely, it looks like all of the NPCs actually have little talk markers over their head, which means that you can actually talk to these NPCs to some degree. They might not give you a quest necessarily, but you can at least interact with the village, and it feels like they're alive, even if you're not there. And that's kind of a pet peeve of mine with RPGs when they have all of these filler NPCs just standing around that don't really serve any real purpose and they have no real dialogue. They're just there to fill up a space and make it look like it's alive, but really they're just waiting for your character to interact with them. And to me that takes you out of the immersion. So I'm glad that these characters at least seem like they're real people, and it really allows you to stay immersed in the game. And I also really love all the detail that they put into this village, from like the people to the buildings. If you look closely at the walls, they have all this intricate detail in the carvings of the wood. There's animals running around, and even just all of the little straws and pieces of brick that they put into the buildings. Like, I feel like it takes a lot more effort to make something look rustic and authentic like this village than it does to make some grandiose castle in a game. So I really commend them for putting all of these details into the artwork and the design of this village, because it really makes it feel like a real place that would actually exist somewhere, at least in the type of setting they were going for here. Alright, so after Geralt gathered all the jobs off of the billboard, he's moved on to another potential quest opportunity by talking to this big, burly, hairy dude named Jenga Fret, who is also, incidentally, a bounty hunter, and that is a not-so-subtle Easter egg for all of us Star Wars fans out there. So anyway, Jenga Fret asks Geralt if he wants to team up and try to hunt down these bad guys named the Grossbard brothers. And during this conversation, you might have noticed that Geralt has a couple different colored dialogue options. So the white lines of dialogue are optional and they're there to provide more information on whatever you're talking about, while the yellow lines of dialogue actually push the conversation forward. And we haven't seen it in the footage yet, but they're probably going to have dialogue options for persuasion and intimidation like they did previously, and it would actually be interesting if they added a flirtation dialogue, especially because this game's going to have Yennefer and Triss, and probably plenty of other love interests. So I think it'd be pretty funny if they added some kind of flirtation dialogue as well. Alright, so after his conversation with the bounty hunter, Geralt heads over to a nearby signpost, which are the designated fast travel spots, and this is where we first get to see the new and improved interactive map. Now I'm calling it the interactive map because they've made a lot of functional changes to this map compared to the one that we saw in the previous gameplay. Now I really liked the look of the previous map because it had this really rustic, gritty feel to it, but it was lacking in a lot of topographical details that this new map seems to have. So if you look at the new map, you can actually zoom in and see specific layouts of buildings. There's a lot more texture detail in things like mountain ranges and valleys, and even the heads-up display has a legend with all the filters, and you have all your basic buttons at the bottom. So overall, this map is just conveying a lot more information than the previous one. Now in this gameplay, the map is of Ard Skellige, which is the biggest island in the archipelago of Skellige Islands, and normally when you see a map this size in any other game, you would think that the whole game takes place in this one location, but that's not the case with The Witcher 3. The Skellige Islands are just one location of many, and in the previous gameplays we got to see a little glimpse of Novigrad, and Novigrad is normally not anywhere near the Skellige Islands, it's inland somewhere, so that kind of gives you an idea of just how massive this game is going to be, and I'm really excited for that. Now, I really love how they did the load screens, at least for the fast traveling. We get to see this slowly panning image of some beautiful scenery, and I assume it's going to be different pictures every time, and you can tell the devs are really proud of their environmental art, which they should be. Alright, so this scene is going to wrap up with Geralt fast traveling to Kartrolde, which is a little harbor town in the north. And my favorite part of this scene is coming up. It's the geese, particularly the goose on the right, so pay attention to this. Yep, not gonna lie, that goose is pretty OP, and I'm definitely gonna be trolling some geese in this game. Alright, so this next clip is just a cutscene of Geralt and Vesemir encountering the Griffin during, well, lunchtime, I guess. And I believe the developer said that this scene happens early on in the game, and it's to sort of illustrate the process you have to go through when you're hunting different monsters, because the hunting will happen sort of in different phases for different monsters. And in this scene, Geralt slices the Griffin in the stomach as he's flying, and that causes the Griffin to start bleeding everywhere, and that's also going to make the Griffin a lot easier to track later on. Now, the Griffin sort of smacked Vesemir pretty hard in the shoulder before flying away, and I'm not really sure if he injured Vesemir's shoulder or if it just has blood on it, but if he did injure him, man, Vesemir is just a tough ass. He can just get a flesh wound from a Griffin and turn around and brush it off like it's nothing. Now that is the Vesemir we know from the books. But anyway, there's not a whole lot else to this scene other than a dude with a sweet bowl cut, so let's move on to the next clip.
I was sure I'd end up like my mare.
Alright, so this next clip, Geralt and Vesemir are riding on horseback through a small village, and the name of the quest is called Lilac and Gooseberries, so of course, this quest has something to do with finding Yennefer. But judging by the conversation as well as the dialogue at the end of the clip, this scene is meant to sort of illustrate how people generally have a distaste for witchers in this world. And if we slow it down a little, we can once again see that there's actually a lot of complexity in the details that they put in the design of this relatively simple place. There's a lot of little touches that make this village seem believably alive, and part of that is attributed to the activity of the NPCs. We have characters skipping rocks in the water, there's a couple women gossiping over laundry, there's another person shooting a bow and arrow. It seems like these NPCs are fairly active and alive, and it doesn't seem like they're waiting around for Geralt to act upon them, which is a refreshing change of pace. And we also know that the day-night cycle affects the NPCs' behavior, which is another factor that really adds to the immersion.
I'll not drink with Weaverlaw's freaks.
Alright, so this scene is a continuation of the previous Lilac and Gooseberries quest, and Geralt has arrived at a Nilfgaardian military camp where he's trying to find some more information on Yennefer. Now, when I was watching this dialogue scene play out, I couldn't help but notice just how different these two guards look from each other. And I know I keep mentioning attention to detail in this game, but it really is something that I find fascinating that they've done, because normally in any other game, two guards at a gate are going to be filled with two generic character models. But if you look at these two guys, they look so distinct. They look like real people. They're wearing different outfits, they have different facial hair, and if you look closely at their clothes, they even have little bits of, ripped threads, and the buckles are uneven on that one guy's arm, and there's just all these little nuanced imperfections between these two characters that really makes them distinct from one another, and it's cool that the creators and the designers put this much detail into some relatively unimportant characters. So once Geralt's done talking to the guards, we can celebrate the next-gen door-opening physics, and I want you guys to listen carefully as he walks into the camp. So the Nilfgaardian soldiers are actually speaking their own native language. That is freaking awesome. And I have a background in linguistics, so I'm fangirling a little bit harder than usual, but you know what? It's really cool to hear Elder Speech in action, and I really appreciate the fact that the developers were able to work that into the game. So I'm definitely going to be spending a lot of time eavesdropping on some of these soldiers to, try and pick up on some Elder Speech, because, I'm a dork like that. So anyway, right here we see Geralt walk into a conversation between the Nilfgaardian commander and one of the Temerian peasants, and based off the conversation, it seems like this commander is a pretty nice guy. He tries to speak peasant to peasant with the farmer, and he even gives the farmer a little discount on his crops that he's supposed to return. And this could just be a tactic to try to gain loyalty from the locals, since the Nilfgaardians did come in and take over the area, or maybe the commander actually is a nice guy. We'll have to just wait and see. But anyway, Geralt eventually introduces himself to the commander, and the commander calls him a Vatgern, which is the Elder Speech term for a Witcher, and he seems kind of taken aback by Geralt, but he doesn't seem too afraid of him, and eventually Geralt asks him if he knows anything about the whereabouts of Yennefer, to which the commander replies that that's a military secret. But based off of the hands-on previews that I've been reading, it seems like we reunite with Yennefer a little sooner than later.
That is a military secret.
Alright, so for this next scene we open up on a mountainside with some next-generation goats, and Geralt is heading to the ocean front, and I just love how he gracefully slides down the mountain to get there. Now, as you can see in the distance, as he makes his way to the water, Geralt runs into these small dragon-like creatures that are definitely not friendly. And as Geralt makes his way a little closer to start fighting these creatures, we can see that they're called echidnas. Now, there doesn't seem to be much information on this creature just yet. Some people are calling it a she-dragon, because it looks like a screaming banshee woman with dragon wings. But we also have seen a still image that was released a while back that seems to resemble the same creature. So these echidnas look pretty nasty, and since he just used his crossbow, I want to point out that his crossbow actually didn't slow down right there like it did in the previous gameplay, so maybe that's not a feature of the crossbow like I thought it was before. So anyway, here comes the exciting part of this clip. Geralt just dove into the water to show off the brand new swimming feature that's been added to The Witcher 3, and to try and get away from those creatures, but they can dive bomb you in the water and chase you anyway, so I guess even with the new swimming feature, the water is still not a very safe place to be. Alright, so for this last scene, we see Geralt getting a sponge bath from some lovely ladies, and he definitely looks like he's enjoying himself. He even has a little smirk on his face, which I thought was a nice touch. It's not something you see very often on Geralt. So in this scene, Geralt is preparing to meet with the Emperor of Nilfgaard, Emhyr Varum Reiss, who is a very important character in the Witcher series, and he has to clean up his act a little bit. But right here, I was actually kind of surprised that we don't get to see a next-gen booty shot from Geralt in all of its glistening glory. But I think I remember the developers mentioning that there's a sex scene early on in the game where we get to see a full men's naked butt, and I'm sure it's Geralt's. But I know I read that there is a sex scene between Geralt and Yennefer early on in the game, because they wanted to establish that romantic relationship between Geralt and Yennefer for the newer players, so that when Yennefer ends up going missing, they kind of understand that significance of Yennefer to Geralt without having read the backstory too much. But you know what? This is The Witcher that we're talking about, so there's going to be plenty of sex and brothels and boobs and butts that I'm sure you're all looking forward to, so I'll just leave it at that. Alright, so now the assistant just asks Geralt to sit down on the bergère so that he can shave his beard off. And honestly, I would not want to get between a Witcher and his beard, am I right? But according to the developers, we are supposed to have the option to keep Geralt's beard or to shave it off. But based off of these dialogue options, it doesn't really seem like we have the choice to do that, but maybe it'll be different once we are actually playing the game. However, we do know that in one of the 16 free DLCs that we get for The Witcher 3, we are getting a beard and hairstyle set for Geralt, which I'm kind of excited about. Alright you guys, so that covers all of the Witcher 3 gameplay footage from January, so let's move on and check out the 7 minutes of gameplay from PAX East. So as you can see, this gameplay opens with a beautiful, beautiful sunset, and there's all these pink and orange hues to everything. It's really cool to see how the day-night cycle is actually going to affect the aesthetics of the landscape, as it should. But, you know, there's a lot of games that don't do that, so it's really neat to see that in action. So once again we get to see Geralt use his signs, and this time he's using Yrden to fight off a wolf, and Yrden puts these little traps on the ground that if an enemy walks through them, they get slowed and injured. And it's not really my favorite sign, I prefer using Igni when I can, but you know, Yrden is still pretty useful. Alright, so now Geralt has moved on to the nearby village, and he's talking to one of the refugees about some missing villagers, who were supposed to escort a caravan to a bridge, but they've gone missing, they haven't been seen for a day, and now Geralt's gonna have to go figure out what happened to them. And I just want to point out really quick that I love Geralt's outfit in this gameplay. He looks so slick, and it looks a lot like what he wears in The Witcher 1. It's not exactly the same outfit, but there's a lot of similarities. And of course we're gonna have plenty of outfit choices in the game, but it's just cool to see them switch it up for this gameplay. Alright, so Geralt and Roach head through No Man's Land to look for these missing villagers, and along the way they end up finding the overturned caravan that the villagers were supposed to be escorting to the bridge. Now there's a barrel of wine on the ground next to the caravan, and Geralt ends up using his Witcher senses to find a trail of footprints leading from the barrel to a nearby cave.
Someone walked through the spilled wine. Kedweni. Smell will linger for hours.
And of course, in true Witcher Quest fashion, as he makes his way to the cave entrance, Geralt finds a dead body, which means he's on the right track. Now if you look up in the right hand corner at the map, there's this big yellow ring that sort of indicates where the waypoints are for the quest that you're on, but as Geralt walks into the cave, you can see that the map sort of shifts and changes into a sort of mini-map. So this cave might be more of a small dungeon that requires navigation, which helps break up the monotony of some of these quests.
Boy, Creve. Your eyes, they shine so in the dark. Thought at first it were the lizard coming.
Alright, so Geralt makes his way through the cave, and he eventually runs into the missing villagers, who tell him that they were attacked by some sort of lizard monster. And based off of their descriptions, Geralt concludes that they were attacked by a royal wyvern, which is in fact a flying lizard creature that spits acid. So Geralt agrees to go and take out this monster, even though he's not too excited about that. But you know, Geralt's the best equipped to take care of this monster, and I think him and the villagers know that if he doesn't go and take out the wyvern, they're going to be sitting in this cave for a while.
We'll wait here. Wouldn't want to get in your way.
Royal Wyvern. Lucky me.
So Geralt makes his way towards another exit where he thinks that the royal wyvern is nesting, but now that we know what kind of creature Geralt is dealing with, it's best to prepare your weapons and yourself before going into battle. And so Geralt is going to choose to oil up one of his swords, which will increase the damage output of the weapon. But the funny thing is, they're actually oiling up his steel sword, which is typically used for fighting humans, and you'll see that when the fight starts, he automatically draws his silver sword, which is used for fighting monsters. So they should have oiled up his silver sword, but you know what, we're just going to let that slide. We get the point of what they're trying to illustrate. They're trying to show that you can oil up your weapons and increase their damage individually, and we also get to see this new interface, which is different from the previous gameplay footage, and they sort of simplified the inventory a little bit. It looks pretty clean and streamlined, and they stuck with the grid format of the items, which is fine with me. I actually prefer that over list inventories, but I do like that they added the horse accessories at the bottom, because before it used to just show you the trophy hook, but now they added the saddlebags, the saddle, and the horse blinders, which is nice because we're gonna be able to customize our horse, so it's cool that they illustrated that in the inventory. I did like in the previous inventory how they would show you what monster you're tracking, and it would recommend certain potions for fighting that monster. I thought that was a nice touch, and unless they have it in another menu, it looks like they got rid of it, which is too bad. But I don't know, maybe they thought that was too much hand-holding, or, you know, maybe they're trying to promote their player's guide, who knows? So anyway, it's time for Geralt to go head-to-head with this royal wyvern, and of course we see him pull out his unoiled silver sword, but that's okay, he's got a whole arsenal of things at his disposal, and he'll do pretty good. So the royal wyvern looks kind of like a dragon mixed with a featherless chicken of some kind. And one of the key features of the royal wyvern that I mentioned earlier is that it spits acid. So of course when you're fighting different monsters, you have to take into account their different strengths and weaknesses, so the acidic spit is one of the strengths of the wyvern. So Geralt is going to have to anticipate its movements and be able to dodge in time to not get hit by the acid. And at the same time, you also have to think about the different types of signs or abilities that might be able to take down different monsters. So with a flying creature like this one, and also with the griffin that we've seen in previous gameplay, it's smart to use the crossbow to try and disable its wings and get it on the ground, and then once you get them on the ground, you can get a few hits in before they get airborne again. So in this fight, after Geralt brings the wyvern to the ground, he sets it ablaze using the Igni sign, which is definitely a good choice. It looks like the wyvern takes quite a bit of damage from that. And in the last moment of this fight, we see Geralt pop a Thunderbolt potion, which is going to double Geralt's damage output, which turns out to be just enough to take out this wyvern.
It's huge. What's the name again?
Royal wyvern. Don't usually come this big.
It's feasted plenty, I reckon. Attacking those traveling the road. What do they call ye, master?
Geralt of Rivia.
Geralt of Rivia. It'll be a tale to tell the young'uns.
So one of the perks of being a monster hunter and taking down creatures of epic proportions is taking home part of the prize. So when you're done fighting a monster, make sure you snag your trophy and keep it riding side saddle, and you'll definitely be the talk of the village. Alright you guys, that wraps up my commentary analysis of The Witcher 3 gameplay from January as well as from PAX East. And if you had something that you wanted to talk about regarding the gameplay, make sure to leave a comment below and keep this conversation going. Now, I was thinking that my next Witcher video could be sort of a vlog style video where I would just discuss some of the topics that were mentioned in the developer Q&A sessions that have happened recently. So if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in seeing, please let me know in the comments below and I can put that together for you guys. And of course, if you had any other suggestions for me, feel free to leave it in the comments. I definitely appreciate all of your feedback. Alright you guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to stay up to date on all of my Witcher 3 content, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and feel free to check out my Witcher 3 playlist, which I've linked on the screen. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys at the next Witcher update.